Good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to today's Chief Learning Officer webinar. My name is Alec, and as always, I'm here today to help answer any of your general or technical questions that may come up. But before we get started, I'm going to cover a couple of things that you should know about the session today. There is no dial-in number for attendees, so all audio will be streamed to you through your computer speakers or headphones. Please adjust your volume there accordingly. At any point during today's presentation, if you have a question, please don't hesitate to submit that. Just click on the Q&A icon located on the right-hand side of your screen, type that question in, and then click Submit. If it's content related, we may have some time for attendee questions towards the end of today's webinar, and we will pull a couple of attendee questions at that point. And if it's a technical question, I'll have an answer for you that should appear on your screen shortly after you submit. Feel free to familiarize yourself with that Q&A tool by letting us know where you're joining in from. We already have some people doing that already. So we have people from Wisconsin, Dubai, Florida, Canada, Detroit, Chicago, right here in Chicago where I'm at. So welcome to all of you. Feel free, like I said, if you want, you can familiarize yourself with that Q&A tool by letting us know where you're joining from. You can download a PDF of the slides to follow along and take notes if you'd like by clicking on the handout icon, which should be appearing right by the Q&A icon. Click there, and like I said, you can pull down that PDF if you'd like. This webinar is being recorded. You're going to receive a link to that recording about 24 hours after the conclusion of today's event, in addition to another link to download the slides if you didn't grab them today, and your HRCI and SHRM certification codes for today's event. All right, we have people joining in from all over the place. I'm seeing all your responses come in now, so thank you all for that. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get things started, but first I'm going to introduce you to today's guest that we have. Today's webinar, as I should say here, is sponsored by CrossKnowledge. It's always a pleasure to work with the folks there, and this event is no exception, and I'm very excited to have today's guest with us, Jan Rijken. Jan is the Learning Director for Wiley CrossKnowledge and is a visiting professor at IE Business School. He's a former CLO, and his areas of expertise include corporate learning transformation, data analytics, skills acquisition, and leadership development. Jan is an internationally recognized thought leader, advisor, researcher, author, speaker on corporate learning, talent and leadership development, and is passionate about sharing his expertise and to build a learning leader community. So I'm excited to have Jan with us. So Jan, let's go ahead and get started.
Well, thanks very much, Alec, and thanks for setting the bar by my introduction. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, from whichever time zone you're in. Good to see such a big and experienced audience attending with some old friends, some new friends. Today's topic is Reshape Your Leadership Development Strategy. Leadership development, as you all know, is a high investment, high impact, and high touch area. It's not always in good shape. The demand is there, the technology is there, but can you, as leadership development professionals, grab the opportunity to deliver? I believe that it's the most challenging and exciting time to be in leadership development. Just imagine how many leaders we together on this webinar tonight touch with our initiatives and can therefore impact culture and performance in our organization. Because our leaders, you know, they lead change, they lead people, so they're at the basics of everything we do. I was in charge for leadership development for many years and made every possible mistake in the book. I'll try to share some of the best practices and lessons learned during my webinar. Now, let's take a look at the agenda. We'll start by looking around us at, you know, the world is changing. Where is it changing? How does that impact leadership and leadership skills? We'll then look at some research in terms of the current state of leadership development. And please project that on your own organization. And then we'll look at, you know, why is leadership development so difficult in many organizations? What are the key enablers for you to reshape your leadership development? And what I'll then do, and that's maybe the center point of the webinar, is show you what I believe is a future-proof leadership development framework. We'll look at some of the KPIs, and hopefully we have some questions and feedback at the end. As I said, we'll focus on leadership development strategy, share research and practical insights. We aim to make this webinar very interactive, so I've included various polls to get your views. So to get you in active mode and allow me to stop talking for a moment, let's start with the first poll. So the first poll is about, which role are you in? Can you share that with us? I'd just like to get a view, but it's also interesting for the audience today to see, where are we? Are we based in leadership development, learning, HR, or in any other areas? So please share that, and maybe we can take a look at the results. During my story, I assume you will share if I'm going too fast or too slow, because I don't want to underestimate your knowledge. So let us know if that's fine, and about the audio quality. So the results from the first poll. So 44% is actually in leadership development. That's not surprising, but it's good to get that confirmed. We've got a fair audience from HR, 15%. We've got 12% from management, so a good spread. So thanks very much for answering that. Can we go to the second poll before I introduce myself? The second poll is about how long have you been in your current role? I'm just interested to hear that, because whenever I talk to organizations, I ask my counterpart, how long have you been in your role? And what I see is that the churn within leadership development and learning is usually quite high. So I'm interested to see, how long have you been in your current role? Can we look at the results? Again, a great spread. So close to 30% is relatively new in their role. And then a good spread over the 4 to 10 years, and then 36% actually in leadership development roles more than 10 years. That's an interesting fact, and that's where, let's say, I see that leadership development is a little bit different from learning and from HRBP roles, because people stay in those roles shorter than in the average leadership development role. So thanks for that starter. That gives me a good impression of where we come from. A short introduction about myself. Alec already introduced me. I'm learning director at Wiley, CrossKnowledge, where, let's say, I advise corporate clients all over the world and boards in terms of people development. I do research and I share knowledge. In addition, I'm a visiting professor at IE Business School in Madrid, one of the highest rated business schools in the world, the #1 in Europe for exec programs, where we run a fantastic and exciting program for our profession. It's called the Masterclass Learning and Development Leadership, and it's probably the best fully blended program for professionals in our business, preparing them for a role as CLO. It's a 6-month program. It's a joint venture with 2 business schools in Europe, and it's now going into its 4th year. Last year we had 5 people from US. I was a CLO for quite a few years in 4 industries, so professional services, automotive, banking, and I started off in retail, and I'll share some of those stories during my webinar. Picture you see is me. The picture is taken on the houseboat. So we live on a houseboat in the center of NL, water on 3 sides, a big garden on the 4th, very close to nature, 2 sons, and a big passion for sports. As I said, one of my focus areas is research, and these are some of the topics that I covered during the past couple of years. I do desk research, I do interviews, and I write an article, which is a combination of practical experience, a tool, and some heavy research. If you're interested, they're all available, and let me know if you want to read them. A short word about CrossKnowledge, the organization where I work. CrossKnowledge is the performance partner for skills acquisition. We help organizations transform by providing digital and blended learning support to develop the needed capabilities and culture. And I think we excel not only because of the solutions, but because we believe we understand your needs and because we understand L&D. We invest heavily in research, and my role is one of them. So, and we have about 400 plus global clients across the different continents. Let's now move on and take a look at our environment. And probably this is all, let's say, recognizable for you. I think the big word is disruption. It's the key label for the world we live in. We've got economic turbulence, we've got globalization, we have got new business models. So for instance, we work with banks moving from retail to fintech banks. We have a war for talent. There's many countries where we have difficulty finding talented people. And for the first time in history, we have 5 generations in the workforce because of pension date shifting. So that is quite a challenge for all of us. In addition, there's obviously the impact for technology, digitalization in your organization. This is hitting every business and every individual. And right now, as you may have read, these areas are being discussed by the World Economic Forum in Davos. They are looking at reskilling 1 billion people in the next 10 years because there's a need for reskilling, mainly because of technology. So that's an important impacting factor. The other one I see changing is employee relations. There is no lifetime employment anymore. Research calls it tours of duty, what the current graduates are looking for. They join your organization, they stay 3 or 4 years, and then look for a new challenge, especially related to their development. But there's more. Organizations are starting to work with more contractors, more temps, more interims. So the question is, to which extent are these developments impacting your target audience and approach? All of these developments are impacting leadership, as your leaders have to drive change, lead people, adapt during delivery. So interesting times for us, right? In addition, what we see is that organizations are redesigning themselves. There are still a number of organizations that are structured according to the way how things were, with a lot of hierarchy, a lot of levels, but many organizations are now moving to a more network structure. And this has big implications for you in learning and leadership development in terms of your target audience, your offer, and, you know, do you do things locally or globally? You may ask yourself, you know, why is this all important? Why are we investing in leadership development? Well, you probably know, but here's a few quotes from very recent studies, studies from the past 3 months. You know, here's an IBM one that says finding managers with the right skills to lead their organization is a critical issue. It's damaging business. Burning Glass is saying management skill represents one of the biggest skills gaps in the job market. And the third one is from the International Growth Center. So bad management could be an important factor behind the lower levels of productivity and development. So we have a burning platform. And the question is, to which extent do these quotes apply to you in your organization? Good leadership is a big competitive factor. Moving on, learning doesn't drive the business, skills do. So another study, and I hope you've seen this one. If you haven't, it is a must read. It's PwC CEO survey. And for the first time since I have been in learning and leadership development, CEOs are the ones that are concerned with the skills gap. until now, it was HR, it was learning and development, but now CEOs are saying, because we have a lack of key skills, we're not able to innovate effectively. Our costs are rising. We're missing our growth targets. So the fact that we haven't got the skills and the right leaders there is impacting business. Do you agree? Moving on, what are the skills that your organization will need? And are you providing these? This is from the World Economic Forum from last year's meeting, where they look ahead and look at the top 10 skills, and these change every year. So they do a forecast of the critical skills that organizations will be needing. And as CrossKnowledge, we are supporting many organizations already in implementing these skills. They are asking us, can you help us provide these skills for our target audience at different levels? So that is important. This is obviously a forecast, and it contains hard skills, soft skills, business and leadership skills. So if you agree, let's now move closer to leadership development, starting with another poll. Alec, can you help me, please? So this is a question that asks for your openness and honesty. How would you describe the current effectiveness of your leadership development strategy? It's anonymous. We cannot see who answers what. So just give it a shot and we can see what we're facing at the moment in the different target audiences. Can we see the results, Alec? Right. And thank you very, very much for opening and answering this very, very honestly. 2% say we are very effective. It's good to have those people on the call, and maybe they can share best practices together with the people who say they're effective. And we have quite a big audience, actually more than 75%, that says we're either not effective or somewhat effective. So thanks for sharing that, and we'll now move forward and see if we can help you shape your leadership development. So let's move forward. Where it starts is, what makes a good leader? Everyone seems to be interested in good leadership. Look at these data. Over the past 4 years, how many hits Google has got, people searching for good leadership, and how many results Amazon has got, and how many articles, more than 3 million journal articles focusing on leading and leadership. I'm sure you're part of these overviews, and of course, I'm sure your senior leaders are too. So be confident that this is an important topic for all of us and all of them. Let's now start to look at some of the facts, relate them to your own organization, and you've just shared your own view on effectiveness. So let's look at what research says on leadership development. 71% of the organizations actually say leaders are not ready to lead for the future. That's quite amazing, right? More than half of the organizations do not have successors for critical leader positions. That could be a risk for future business. And more than 80% indicate that their leaders are not effective at developing leaders. And you need them, because I don't need to preach to the converted. We can offer fantastic leadership development, and we'll go later into how we do that. But we need leaders at every level to support you. Only 19% of leaders today believe that leadership development is relevant to the issues they face. And I think the key is that they feel supported in terms of their future development, but not for today's development and their current issues. So we'll look at those. Last two facts: 90% of corporate organizations have leadership development. So that's an open door. But only 5% have leadership development for all leaders, so for all leader levels. So just see for yourself to which extent that applies to you. I hope you're still with me, because I'm ready to move on. So hope you are too. Let's now look at some of the leadership development ambitions at three levels. The first is, the strategic level. Why are we doing leadership development? Obviously, because we need to deliver, leaders need to deliver the business strategy. They need to lead change in your organizations and improve high performance at all levels. And growing in importance, your leaders are there to transform culture and trust in your organization. If we look at a more tactical level, leadership development is about getting the right people in place, improving career planning, improving retention for current and future leaders, and solidify the bench strength in your organization. At a very operational level, so what are leadership development people telling us that they are aiming for, and we'll turn those into KPIs later on. It's about leadership development with impact, leadership development with efficiency, so quicker, cheaper, more cost effective, and in terms of leadership development, offering it accelerate time to performance. So I've shared quite a lot of research with you. So before we move on, I have another poll for you to allow me to drink some water and for you to share some views. So just a quick question before I move into these areas. Which leadership development area would you most like to improve? I've just selected 5. I could have selected 10, but it's always good to focus. So if you've scored, I'd like to see the scores, and thank you very much for being so active and contributing, because that helps also in sharing results with your peers on the call. So can I see the results, Alec? Let's take a look at these. Again, a nice spread. Shorten time to competence. Wouldn't it be good if we would be able to do that? That's a quarter of the audience. Reduce costs. This is an interesting fact, because 5-6 years ago, I ran a poll similar to this, and many organizations were aiming for a reduction of cost in their leadership development. It seems to be related to the economy or to the burning platform. So there's less cases of having to reduce costs. There's a portion of people who say, I would like to offer leadership development to all levels in my organization, and we'll show you how a little later. Obviously, increase engagement. That is an important one, because lack of engagement, lack of personalization, and so forth is one of the biggest areas in leadership development, and a higher degree of personalization. So thanks very much for sharing that. Let's move on, and let's now take a look at what's needed to reshape your leadership development strategy. When I started, I labeled this slide, why does leadership development fail? But I decided, it's better to have a positive label. So let's just take a look at some of the factors and enablers that you need to reshape your leadership development strategy. And I'll address quite a few of them. I believe you need to align with business strategy. A personal story, I have been guilty of starting a leadership development program that was not linked to business strategy. I said yes too soon to somebody coming in and asking me for a leadership program. I was willing and eager to develop it, rolled it out. It was not aligned. So you need to align it. And agree, but business sponsorship. I think one of the main things, main questions you need a yes on is who is your business sponsor before you go on the road with your program. Have you included changing perspectives on leadership? You know, I showed you how organizations are changing. More networks, more informal organizations, more communities. So how do you include that in your leadership development offer? That's a big question. Obviously, demonstrating performance impact. Many programs are not delivering on expectations. So you need to look at how can we demonstrate performance impact, and we'll look at how you can do that. One of the ways you can do that is ground your leadership development program in a positive learning climate, because obviously people need support. So you need to make sure that when those people that you develop go back to the workplace, they get supported in embedding what they have learned. Can you ensure optimal personalization? You know, can you offer your leadership development just in time, just enough, and just for you? That is vital. How good are you at marketing and positioning your leadership development? I thought, together with my leadership development team, that we were great. We were great at developing programs. We were great at marketing. But actually, when I started talking to a professional product marketeer, he laughed at me. He asked, how do you launch this key initiative? And I said, I send a mail to all participants, to all leaders. And he said, and? I said, what do you mean, and? He said, is that all? Yes, that was all. So I learned during the journey of my career to look at target audiences, to look at the different channels we can use to market, and the fact that we need professional marketing expertise for our key initiatives. I was really pleased to see when I was involved in a new CrossKnowledge initiative with a global bank, that in a very first design meeting, there was a marketeer present to already look at what does this mean for our target audience. The number 8 factor is, you know, is there a solid link to the workplace? Can people come back and apply it immediately? Have you got clear design principles? Do you embrace neuroscience? Because there's plenty available. And have you got skilled L&D experts? Performance consulting is the key to most of these. You know, this is the positive side to the failure research that I talked about earlier. Let's move on. Let's move on, given the time. I think we've got another poll before I dive into the framework, Alec. So the question is, if you look at your current leadership solutions, what's your main format? Is it face-to-face? Is it face-to-face with some blend? Is it fully blended, or is it digital? So can you give us your vote, please? Thank you. Alec, can you show me the results? A good spread, a very good spread. So a quarter of the organizations are saying still face-to-face, 42% face-to-face with some blend, and that's what I recognize from conversations I am having with leadership development leaders. Good to see that a quarter is fully blended and 7% digital. So that's good. Let's now move on and look at why I believe it is important that you blend your leadership development. I believe and this is proved by practice, best practices and research, you know, if you blend your leadership development, it is scalable and it can save you costs over face-to-face training. It reduces time away from work. That's a complaint the leaders often get from the business. It also links closer to learner needs and improve engagement. And looking at the earlier poll, I think this is an important reason for you to blend your leadership development. It can also help us reduce time to competency. which can help you deliver people with the right capabilities earlier. It can help leverage collective experience and intelligence in using social learning in the best possible way, and faster application in the flow of work by linking it to the workplace. So that's good to see. This is some research from Josh Bursin, who you all know. He says, well, you know, leadership academies, if you look at a leadership framework, it could actually contain 4 different forms of learning: micro learning, macro learning, the group learning, that's more about the face-to-face part, the events, the sessions, and on the job learning. So you can have a look at the slides and the recording later. I won't go into all the details, but I wanted to link this to, I wanted to show this because this is one of the pillars of the framework I'm going to show you. In addition to those 4 forms of learning, we've identified 3 essentials that we advise organizations to integrate in their leadership development strategy. So we're moving to the more practical part of reshaping L&D now. You know, how can we develop all leaders without exception with optimal use of resources? How can we offer personalized learning to each leader at the moment of need? And how to ensure that all critical leadership skills are mastered consistently. So that's a challenge that we set ourselves when we did the research. And what we came up with is the following framework. It looks complex at first sight, but I will go through it step by step with you. And what I'd like you to do is explore, you know, which pillars, because we've got 4 pillars: career programs, performance modules, digital essentials, and organization transformation. What have you already got in place? Because I think that is important for you to review. What can you add? Let's take it step by step. So here's the framework, and here what you see are the key roles. You know, leading self, leading people, leading teams, leading your function. There's an F missing, sorry, and leading your organization. So let's start with the first pillar, and we call that the career programs. And I'm sure you've got them in place. Most of you have got these in place. It's about supporting leaders who want the next step. So these are linked to your talent management strategy. These programs are by invitation. Usually they're quite long in terms of duration, 6 to 12 months. Usually they are blended. Traditionally, they used to be face-to-face. In this present day and age, they are blended. And there's quite a major investment there in terms of funding and time. And in gray, you will see some of the content. I'm sure you've got this pillar to some extent in place. Now let's look at the second one, which is performance modules. You know, these are standalone modules, blended, and are linked to, I have a capability gap. So it's not about careers, it's about, I have a capability gap. So these are linked to the performance cycle. This is about self-registration. So your leaders at different levels have a performance gap. Following the performance conversation, you know, they can sign up for one of these modules. The duration is usually short, 1 to 3 days, fully blended, limited investment, and a short time to competency. And again, here's some examples from client best practices and my best practices in organizations like KPMG and Daimler. Populate these gray areas by examples from your own organization. So I'm not sure whether you've got this in place, something to think about. The third one is about digital essentials. So it's not about career development, it's not about capability gaps, it's about an urgent need. So your leaders in the organization need help now. This is linked to urgent issues. The curriculum is available 24/7 and can be accessed by everyone by self-registration. It's about micro-learning. It's between 2 and 15 minutes. It's digital, it's scalable, it's a limited investment, and it's a quick use. So here again, you see some of the examples, and CrossKnowledge has implemented a digital academy like this for organizations like Motorola in US. So reflect on this, have you got this in place, and can it help you? It does link to the need for more engagement and more personalization. It does absolutely help. Let's now move to the fourth and final pillar. This is about organization transformation programs, blended. So have you got this in place? Most organizations are in transformation, a new strategy, new leadership capabilities. It's about we needing to change. So it's about group organization change. This is linked to organizational strategy. This program is offered across your leadership levels. It could be top down. So we've got quite a few initiatives running at the moment where we decide to go top down. And I think it's a smart way, because then leaders can coach leaders. I once made the mistake of skipping the very top level, and the first thing that on day one that the second level said is, how about the board? Why are they not going through this? Why do we and all the levels below us go through this? Do they think they don't need it? So I would encourage you to go top down. So it's across leadership population. It's by invitation. It is sponsored by the exec. It is a major investment. And it's, as I said, linked to organizational strategy. So here's two examples, also current examples from clients in US and Brazil. They're offering bigger modules like driving transformation and performance, and your role in leading change and collaboration. So people have got a mix of workshops and digital learning. So this is the framework, and I realize that it's quite heavy in terms of shooting it at you, but maybe you can reflect following the webinar and have a look at the different modules and think about what am I missing. But before we move on, and before I go into the detail of one of the programs in terms of the design, a very quick question to you. First impression, Alec, can you share the question, please? Yeah. So which framework dimension is new to your current setup? Is it the performance modules? Is it the digital essentials? Is it the transformation programs? Or is it none of these? So just as a first question, the performance modules were the 1 to 3 day programs, digital essentials, the 24/7 available programs, transformation is about change. So thanks for scoring. Alec, can we see the results? Well, this is actually quite exciting to see, because it shows that most of you have got performance modules in place. So that is actually very good to see. Digital essentials about a quarter, so it could be that you need to look at them. And the transformation programs, 45% saying this is new, and this is actually where you can play your strategic role. If there's change in your organization, it would be great if you would have the opportunity to team up with some of the senior sponsors and roll out the transformation programs needing to prepare your organizations for the future. Another exciting thing is that 23% say, well, actually, on nice framework, but none of this is new. We're already implementing it. So that's good for you, and it's actually quite a good score. Let's now move on and look at some of the detail. What I've shared, I won't go through all of them, obviously that's too much. It's just one example from a blended career program. Just picked out one which is about leading people. It's a deeper dive. This is the aim is to operationalize, to show you how we blended the program, because I usually get many questions on this topic. The example is based on best practices in research, and actually we're not only doing this for our clients. I implemented this at KPMG. It used to be a 12-month program, used to be mainly face-to-face, and it's completely transformed to a blended program with many formal dimensions, many social dimensions, and equally quite a few workplace dimensions. So one deeper dive to show you how programs are transforming. If you look at the formal component of this blended program, just have a look in red how many elements are actually digital. So judge for yourself to which extent you can use technology to boost leadership development impact in your organization. We're moving on. I am pretty sure that the people attending this call are good at leadership development, design, development, and delivery. But the question is that all that we need to do? The question is, if you're taking the key enablers into account enough, do you have enough focus on the learning climate needing to embed all your investments? Have we created an organization which truly has a climate to learn, is the big question. Within CrossKnowledge, we're currently doing deep academic research on learning climate and what those factors are. And it's all about, do leaders get the opportunity to learn? Do they get the time to learn? Do they get the support to learn? Is learning actually rewarded and recognized? Do your leaders take time to reflect? So many of you are probably doing this, but in terms of design and design principles, one of the questions I believe you should be asking yourself in terms of scoping a new initiative is, to which extent do I feel confident that the solutions that we are providing are embedded by the current learning climate? And if not, you have to look at how can you influence the learning climate. We've got practical questionnaires which score the positive learning climate in organizations. So that's about the learning climate. Moving on, as promised, I would illustrate some leadership development KPIs, and they're probably no surprise to you. Here's an overview of much used KPIs with a variation from basic to impact. If you look at the top three, you are all reporting on the number of leaders changed, the number of leadership development programs, and probably on your time to competence. So, that's a given. Like, the budget spent. You should be able to dream that. The next few, are focused on the individual impact of your leadership development. Are you increasing performance in role? Which percentage of leaders has the right skills? Are you building a future pool of successors? And are you retaining your leaders? So they're important to take into account too. And the bottom three are about organizational impact. The percentage of high potential leaders promoted, the leader performance impacting business and client feedback. These are just a few examples. Those of you that know me, I publish regularly, and I published an article called annual learning reporting, and that includes many of these KPIs and many more. I interviewed 30 leadership development and learning leaders and asked them, what KPIs are you currently reporting on, and what would your senior stakeholders like you to report on? And we've identified 56 KPIs, out of which I believe you should choose between 8 and 10 to report on. So if you want to read that article, it's available online, or otherwise let me know. We are slowly moving towards the end of my leadership development story. I've shared that it's not enough to redesign your leadership curriculum. You need to put more pieces of the L&D strategy puzzle in place to realize success. And here's a few key enablers. I've covered some, and others are important too. So have you got exec sponsorship for your key initiatives? Are you linking what you do in terms of leadership development to your performance cycle and your talent process? To which extent is there management accountability for development, so coaching, developing others? Are you involving your leaders in the design? Are you looking at the change management process, including your marketing strategy? And last but not least, how about your L&D capabilities and mindset? This is another area that we address in the masterclass that I shared with you. People come in with a personal challenge. It's either about leadership development strategy, or it's about developing leader capabilities. So reflect on, have you and your team got the right capabilities and mindset, and draw your conclusions before your stakeholders do that. Now, it's time before we close for two things. One, I'd like a quick pulse survey on whether this was useful for you, this webinar. So can you please score, because it gives us a good idea of if we're doing and sharing the right ideas, the right thoughts. So can you please share? And once you've done that, I want to give you the opportunity to bring forward questions. We've already received one or two, so I think we've got about 10 minutes left. So we need a few minutes to close, so I think there's time for 3 or 4 questions. So thanks for scoring this one. Alec, can we move to the questions?
Absolutely, and yeah, we can. We have a ton of questions rolling in, but please do not hesitate to submit. We're not going to be able to get to all of them today, but we will take a couple. We're going to start with this one here that I have, and the question is, what is your view on competency frameworks as many organizations use these?
That is an interesting question, and a very good and deep one. I think there's 2 sides to this coin. One is, I think competency frameworks provide structure, but they also provide risks, because I see organizations clinging on to competency frameworks too much, because they can be too rigid, fixed and focused on the past. I believe, they're fine to work with because they provide flexibility and consistency and structure. But it would be good to do a rebrand. So focus on key job skills and capabilities. Use it as a tool for learning. And use it as a tool to update your skill portfolio regularly. And contextualize, because organizations are changing. So thanks for that question, and I believe it's on many people's minds.
Absolutely, yeah. We're going to go to this next one here. This comes from Kimberly, and Kimberly's question is, our organization doesn't really have a learning climate. How can we best create one without alienating the learners?
I think, well, that's a great question, Kimberly, and I think your learners, they are an important part of your learning climate. That's where it starts. Let me share a few things with you. Many organizations are struggling with what you've shared, and I think we have all got a learning climate. The question is, how positive is it, or is it not positive? So and it's a difficult beast to influence. So what are the levers you can use? First of all, I think it would be good to look at your exec level to see, are there people who could be good sponsors for leadership development and learning, at the very top level. So role models in terms of learning and supporting learning. That's one. Secondly, it is about marketing. Try to market best practices as much as possible. Use ambassadors, use your talent community to share learnings. When we travel, when we eat in restaurants, we score and we give feedback. So encourage your people to do that in terms of learning. There's a formal element to it too. So can you include development targets in your performance cycle? You can consider it to do it yes or no. Another interesting example that I saw and heard about during the last 2 months is the following. I've now visited 2 organizations who offer their staff a labor contract, which all of you do too, and they offer them a psychological contract, which is a 1-pager with 5 lines about what the organization expects from a new joiner, and 5 lines about what the new joiner can expect from the organization in terms of development. And this is the red thread during the first 12 months. And automatically, because of that, you get people own their own development more than ever before. So it spreads across the waves of your organization slowly but steadily. I know this is a very, let's say, diffuse answer. There is not one answer to this. And the other thing I can recommend is maybe you read some of our learning climate research, because we've identified 6 key factors that influence the learning climate that you need to be aware of. So thanks, Kimberly.
All right, Jan. Go ahead.
No, have we got another question?
Yeah, absolutely. So this one here comes from Jen. Jen's question starts with a comment. Shopify has a strong remote culture, and here comes the question. Do you recommend any specific L&D considerations that can effectively support the development and growth of a remote culture? Ours currently is live screen to screen rather than face to face.
Well, thanks for that question, Jen. There's a couple of things. So the distribution of your workforce is a given. You can't influence that. So what can you do? You can look at how you can connect people. So you shared the online culture that your organization has, which is good. So you're probably aware of the tools that you can use in terms of learning in a remote culture. So tools like Adobe Connect or Zoom or others, where you can connect people, where you can split people into groups. So that is important. And in addition, I would challenge you to look at to which extent can you, as learning and development, facilitate communities, so the social learning part. I know there's a lot of that going on, and research actually shows that there's 2 types of communities that really work. Communities that are development related, so we start a talent program or a leadership development program, people are in the same cohort and are willing to share, topics. and the other community that works is a topic-oriented community. So that's something to think about. And I'll give you the example from my Mercedes days. I was responsible with my team for training the technicians all over the globe. And technicians are people, you know, they don't like learning, they don't want to come to classes, but we had to bring them in from time to time whenever possible. But what we did in addition is set up communities, topic-related communities on topics that were very close to their work, which was technical, repairing cars. So because of that, because there was a what's in it for me, they got together and let's say the community stayed active, and our role as L&D changed. And that's something for you to think about, Jen, you know, because many organizations, they used to be face-to-face oriented, but if you're now changing to a more online remote culture and supporting development from there, you need to make sure that your people, you know, are able to act as community managers, where your role is more about enabling and facilitating and learning from the participants than you know, sending your knowledge. So they are some of the elements that you can consider. Thanks for that question.
All right, thank you, Jan. So
maybe one more.
All right, perfect. Yeah, it looks like we have time for one more, and this comes from Rita. And before I read this, it's just a comment from me. This is kind of a variation of a question that we get a lot. So I always like to hear everybody, all of my different speakers' inputs on this type of question. So Rita's question is, I have a great relationship with senior leadership, except for our CHRO, who doesn't believe in OD and L&D. I've tried metrics, which he loves, but just can't seem to move the needle and convince him. So do you have any wisdom or advice on how to sway him?
I've been there. So I think there's 3 areas that you can address, and you're addressing one, which is metrics. The second one, and that's the route I would go, is to set up governance. You know, this webinar is not about governance, but that's a separate topic that I teach about a lot. So I would consider and recommend you to think about, can you set up a steering committee for leadership development or learning? And I'll give you the example from KPMG where I had the same issue. I couldn't move the needle enough, and I know there was a business need. So what I did is I approached the business leaders, and they said, you know, we need to move. And I came with the suggestion to set up a steering group. We had 5 business units. So in that steering group were the COOs from all those business units, the CHRO, and me. So it wasn't just me against the CHRO, it was me and the business leaders and the CHRO together in a governing structure. And what we did there was 4 things. Basically, we validated the strategy. We identified key priorities for the coming year. We identified business sponsors for the 3 or 4 key international initiatives. And last but not least, we blessed the budget. So there's an Academy's white paper that I can recommend. Let's say in my closing slide, I'll show my LinkedIn profile. So send me any questions. But feel free to link with me on LinkedIn. But there's an interesting and very good short white paper on governance, and it goes for all of you. I believe that the biggest way to accelerate many of your issues is by setting up and starting with a good learning and leadership development governance. It sounds like a preach, but it's not meant that way. It's more that I'm passionate about this. Thank you for joining. I assume you can now reshape your leadership development strategy and curriculum with the framework and guidelines that I've provided. Thank you for your time, interest, and active participation. Please connect with us with questions, ideas, and views, plus the opportunities to access other recent strategic research. We're running a few live events in US next week, in New York and in San Francisco, so feel free to access that. If you want to know more about the masterclass or the CrossKnowledge best practices, let us know. Otherwise, have a good day and hope to see you someday and connect with you soon. Bye-bye.
All right, yeah, Jan, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. I also want to take this time to quickly thank our sponsors over at CrossKnowledge. It's always a pleasure to work with the team there on these webinars when they show up on my schedule. So again, thank you to CrossKnowledge for sponsoring today's event and their continued support here at CLO. All right, so thanks again, everybody. We'll see you all back here for our next CLO webinar taking place this coming Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific, titled 3 Ways to Gamify Learning to Increase Employee Engagement. Thanks again, everybody, and have a great day.